Well, for the aviation sector, there is good news, there was bad news, but hopefully exciting days ahead. And exciting days ahead because, well, in Mumbai, there is a new airport which is coming. For commuters, there are new aircrafts coming. And for investors, there are a lot of themes within the aviation sector which currently are, in a sense, getting created. So one easy way to understand the aviation sector is airlines. Another way of understanding aviation sector is that you look at airport or you look at airport operators. Third, you look at fleet maintenance companies, look at MROs. If aviation is the next multi-billion-dollar theme, what is the best way investors can look at it? Let's take that conversation forward with Devesh Agarwal, Aviation Expert, and Mayur Milak, Senior Vice President, Auto and Aviation at Asian Markets Securities. Good morning to both of you. Thank you for joining us. The first port of call, the minute you say aviation, is Indigo, SpiceJet, and you stop there. But aviation is going beyond that. So in terms of a tracking for the aviation sector, and if our viewers are looking at betting on the aviation sector, should they restrict the bets just to airlines, or it's now time to cast the net wide?
So I think clearly it has to start with Interglobe Aviation, the leader there, and possibly doing everything right in the direction. They've already had strong growth plans. You're sitting at a 63-64% domestic market share. Looking at two new airports coming in, the only possible airline who has a secured supply as far as aircrafts are concerned. From what I understand, this whole Airbus Boeing issue and the newer aircrafts really not coming in and the older one going away, the whole secondary market, your lease costs are up by at least 15 to 20%. Now for anybody to come in the market and act as competition to you, you're already way ahead in the cost parameters as a cost leader. And I think that is what actually makes them really stand out of the whole equation.
Okay. Very clearly, if one really looks at the pecking order right now, it is Indigo all the way. Air India, which was supposed to be the market leader, that has not really impacted the market per se. And in terms of the total size of opportunity, this is one sector which is growing actually higher than GDP. That's the construct of the aviation or the airline market. But Mr. Agarwal, there are, when a plane flies, there are a lot of moving parts. There is an airport. There are airport operators. There are engineers. There are MROs. There are maintenance companies. Is it time now to have more like a shovel and a pick approach, which is that while airlines are going to grow, the real money for investors would be made in the derivative place, not the real bets, but derivative place?
Good morning. Thank you for having me. Yes, I agree with you. There was a kind of a thought that was coming to my mind. I don't want to begin on a negative note, but one of the things that Indian aviation is still very sadly lacking is the availability of true talent in especially the vice president and senior sectors like the C-suite. Just now, Mayur was mentioning Indigo has got a very good supply of the aircraft. It has got the pilots, everything. But where do you see the depth and the succession planning going on in any airline in India? We are having to still import our CEOs, people in the sort of upper senior ranks are kind of still fumbling around. We don't have true talent in India. The closest parallel I would draw was, the evolution of the banking industry from the time of the Sarkari banks to the point the foreign banks entered, created a new retail playing field, and then, slowly the Indian talent developed. That talent is not developing as fast in the aviation industry that I'm, comfortable with, especially in the airline sector. So I would look to investing in the other aspects. The other element also is the Indian aviation sector is extremely toxic for airlines. It is the only part of the entire aviation ecosystem where there is really true competition. Everywhere else, it is a monopoly. You take airports, they are essentially monopolies. MROs are also, I would not quite say monopolies, but they are few and far between. So as an investor, I would look at these elements of the market where I can, sort of get a little more predictability. Airlines, literally quarter to quarter, as things go up, they go down. The airline stocks will move up and down. So I'm going to be a little cautious on airline stocks. Maybe for the next, see, last 2 years have been good for airlines. There were lesser aircraft delivered, anywhere from I think around 23 to 34% less aircraft than compared to 2018. Uh, which says a lot. So therefore, airlines, were flying much more higher passenger load factors, which in turn allowed them to keep fares at a very buoyant level. Whereas now you are beginning to see, we are seeing, all of a sudden you're going to find a fight between Israel and Iran crop up. The Ukraine war is still going on. The president of the United States, is trying to shake up the world order when it comes to economics. So there is a what I call the FUD factor, the fear, uncertainty, and doubt. And this is about the time when the airline supply chain has started getting its act together and will start delivering aircraft more faster. Now, all of a sudden, you're going to have aircraft having capacity come in. Airlines are going to, have capacity coming into their fleets, but you're going to see a potential dip in travel. And as far as GDP goes, it is a very old axiom that airlines or aviation industry grows typically at about 2x of GDP. So if that is not the growth rate we are experiencing, then airline sector is falling behind actually.
Okay, so that's a very valid point, Mr. Agarwal. Thanks so much for sharing your outlook on where you believe the Indian aviation space is heading. But Mr. Milak, how much do you agree with the point that this overhang that we have in terms of global turmoil coming in, we have a lot of tensions that are erupting globally that could affect Indian aviation? And a point that Mr. Agarwal is making is also that a lot of our talent in terms of management is imported, which is the case with Indigo as well. So given all of these, both of these factors, do you think Indigo as an airline, is there anything that could threaten it given the kind of up move we are seeing in geopolitical tensions also?
So I think, see, there are two ways of looking at it. One, of course, their intentions are now, their next big growth actually comes in the international territory, right? Indian boundaries, you've already made a 64%. And honestly, I think looking at the May numbers right now, seeing just a 2% YOY growth actually positively surprises me, because looking at that war situation, I was actually anticipating that this month you could see a YOY decline. But we've actually managed to still keep that in the positive territory, looking at the background from where we are. And looking at, of course, the fact that, as Devesh has rightly pointed, there are a lot of global geopolitical tensions going around. You really don't know the cost parameters. But let's be honest, we are here for a relative game, right? I mean, if I am not the only one who's struggling, and this is a global phenomenon. The fact that my balance sheet allows me that kind of strength. So, if let's say, for whatever reasons the war has stopped, but let's say if tomorrow crude were to go to $100, I'd still tell you that at least Indigo can weather the storm. Whether the other guys are really capable to have that kind of buffer in their, looking at the whole scenario right now, you would say that you will always want to stick to the leader, looking at all the geopolitical tensions going around, because he is possibly the last who is really going to fall. Coming to the talent part of it, I completely agree. I think we are way far in that. But that really can't be a reason for not to invest. I think as much as the Indian company is growing and it is giving you a chance to grow along, as an investor, I think that is what I'd first want to look at. But yeah, I think we have a long way to go as far as domestic talent coming up front is concerned. There's no two things about that. I think a lot needs to be done around the entire ecology. We do not have domestic MRO facilities. We still depend on the aircrafts really to go outside of India to do a Channel C or Channel D checks. So of course, but I think looking at a 10-year phenomena, let's say from now, the next 10 years, all of these are bound to happen, because you are that one country who's possibly showing a strong resilience, a steady state growth. So these are territories where all the investors will also feel comfortable plugging in the money. So I'd say that yes, the ecology is nowhere close to where a developed country should be, but we are possibly going there step by step, yes.
All right, but But Mr. Agrawal, I just wanted to have your take on the growth in the Indian aviation that is expected, and especially with respect to the under penetration that we have. Because I was just looking at some numbers wherein India still remains a highly under penetrated air travel market with a trip per capita of just 0.1%, remaining amongst the lowest globally. What are the key unlocks that are needed as per you in order to drive this growth, and especially from the tier 2 and the non-metro cities, and how do you see this India developing as a market from an under-penetrated and eventually going up the ladder and getting more and more people into this consumption side?
Okay, so the closest equivalent that I can immediately say is China, because we have, relatively similar populations, may not be the same geographical size, but fairly, decent. We are large geographically, north to south, east to west, and we have an equally large population. Just a simple statistic, say that we are the third largest aviation market in the world, but China is 6 times bigger than our market. And if you see, that also draws a similar parallel to, income per capita, not necessarily GDP per capita. So one of the things that we have to look at, India, where we have the opportunity to make air travel more affordable, is to reduce monopolization in the sector. The fuel prices, for instance, are controlled by the oil marketing companies who have the maximum markup. The profit levels of aviation turbine fuel is the highest for the fuel companies. You have a complete monopolistic control of the air traffic control system. You have almost, I would say it, I wouldn't even, I'll go out and say it is a monopoly in the airport space. So whatever airports want to charge, I mean, you've got an airport of the size of Guwahati that is charging 900 to 1,000 rupees as passenger UDF, user development charges. Now, if you're charging close to 1,000 rupees, where is a person going to be willing to spend 2,000 more to fly on a plane? I mean, you can't be having an airport charging one half or your ticket price today. The airlines are virtually getting nothing. It is all these add-on fees, security fee, processing fee, passenger fee, UDF, all these kind of things. So the airlines are in control of less than, I would even go so far as to say they can control less than 10% of their total cost. The rest of it is totally uncontrolled. Till we don't develop the concept of secondary markets, or rather secondary airports, which are low cost, low frill, just like if you see the Indian consumer, the Indian passenger has clearly exercised their uh, choice for low cost. I don't want all the frills and benefits of a full size legacy carrier. Why am I not having a low cost airport? Why is it that all our airports in India are essentially glorified shopping malls with aero bridges attached to them? So till we don't reduce the overall cost of travel, we are not going to penetrate the the underserved market, especially the tier 2 and tier 3 cities, which are lot more what do you say, they are lot more price conscious when compared to the metros. Of course, as India's GDP grows up, the per capita income continues to increase. The tendency will go towards um, air travel. And also, one other interesting phenomena I wanted to say: social media plays a big role in the under 35 age bracket in terms of people as a how do I say, as a motivator to travel. Elderly, the plus 35, especially 45 to 60, they tend to look at hotel websites and airline websites and all that, but the under 35 look at social media as a means to like wanderlust, go out on travels, but then they are also on a much more tighter budget. So we have to reduce the overall cost and still have a segment that says, hey, I mean, we in our country, we have people who stay in 1,000 rupee a night or 500 rupee a night lodges. And we have people in this country who stay in 50,000 rupee a night, super luxury 5 stars. So we have to segment our thing, but the majority of that traffic is still at the bottom end of the segment. It's the same thing in the automobile sector as well. If you see the number of cars sold in the higher segments versus the number of cars sold in the entry level segments. So we have to figure out a way to reduce costs by increasing competition, especially in these segments which the airlines do not control.
Take there, Mr. Agarwal, that airlines do control less than 10% of their overall cost, and so is the case with the consumers, who hardly have no choice apart from the fact that they have to pay more with such add-ons as well, and along with that there's a disproportionate pricing as well, where they are a bit exploited. But Mayur, I want to take the other point forward with you, is the overall trend in terms of premiumization, because the fact of the matter is now more and more people want to travel by air. We are already seeing that happening in numbers, but now airline companies are also shifting towards premiumization, with the biggest of all, Indigo, coming into the business class offering as well. We have seen that trend in the autos, and you must agree that from small cars it's transitioned to SUVs and now big techs. But can we draw some parallel here between aviation sector, that from business class, what all that airline companies can think of in order to make the experience better?
Sure, I think, who doesn't like premiumization? I mean, given a choice, I think I'd agree with, most of the arguments that we've seen here. Given a choice, if you can make it an affordable premium experience, I'm sure that is how, we should actually aspire to grow. But having said that, I think, yes, you have to make space for that premium experience. And I think gradually it has to come from the leader. Tatas have been there for a long time now, but I think now with Indigo also putting a foot on that pedal, I'm sure, in times to come, we should experience more and more of the premium or the premium economy, the business class is coming into this. I think if you're going to go international, this is where you will have to really come at par with any other global airline. So I don't see there is any choice on that. I think this is the way forward. Yes, this is how it should be.
Can India afford, or rather the kind of purchasing power that we have, in how many years do you see such more trends shaping up? Because for that, the Indian consumer really needs to have that purchasing power as well.
Yeah, I think for a long time we've been undermining this purchasing power, if you ask me. I mean, as we were, just taking the reference of autos, I think 5 years back, let's say just around COVID, just pre-COVID, your average selling price used to be about 5.5 lakh rupee, right? Now you're selling, the best of SUVs come in that range of 14 lakh to 18 lakh, 20 lakh. And I think we are seeing the entire growth coming into that segment. So clearly, if you offer a good experience, if you offer a premium experience, I'm sure people in India are ready to pay. I don't think we are that poor a nation. I think people can afford the luxury. The only point is, there has to be a very thin line discovery between exploitation and willingness to pay, right? If you give me a good experience, I'm sure the willingness to pay is there. If you're giving me this out of no choice, as most of these costs are monopolistic costs, then I think that's a bit unfair on the airline companies to really plug them down and say that, hey, you know what, all your costs are high, but you should give me an affordable ticket. I don't think it works like that in business.
Sure, point taken. Mr. Agarwal, Mr. Milak, thank you so much for joining us today to give us a sense of how the Indian aviation landscape is shaping up, and also for flagging of concerns that our viewers should be mindful of. But on that